In this video, I'm going to show you a simple homepage layout that will automatically display the latest content from throughout your website. By setting up your content to automatically flow to the homepage, you can minimize the daily tasks of updating your site. Starting with the top of the page, I've taken some inspiration from St. Louis Magazine and set up a 2/3 column on the left with a couple of stories, and then to the right, I've added a list of other top stories. This is a common layout you see these days on a variety of magazine-type websites. Then I broke the page up a bit by adding a full-width gallery to promote my guides, which is something I only update annually, but drives quite a lot of traffic to the site. Below that, I've inserted a form for my newsletter sign-up. Most clients use a third-party newsletter service such as MailChimp or one of the others. Here I pasted the form code using an HTML sprocket. Then at the bottom, I continue with the flow of the latest published content in a 2/3 column on the left. On the right, a 1/3 column, I've inserted a 300 by 250 rectangle banner, and below it, a calendar sprocket showing the latest events I have in my system. This page is completely automated. Once you have it set up, there's no need to edit it except when you want to change something or modify the layout. So let me now show you how to set that up. To get started, let's set up the top area where we'll have our featured stories. On the left is a carousel sprocket at 2/3 width, and on the right is a list sprocket at 1/3. Here we will add a new container and make it a 2/3 width. Then I'll add another container and make it 1/3. You can see it drops right into place. If you wanted to, you could drag the 1/3 container over to the left, but in this case, the layout I want is a 2/3 left and 1/3 right. Now when I add my sprockets, they'll just fill the container. In the left column, I'm going to add a carousel. I'll click the Add button inside of the container. A pop-up will appear to either create a new sprocket or select an existing one. I've already created my individual sprockets, so I'm going to grab those. You can also add new sprockets at this point, but it's advisable to reuse sprockets as much as possible. So I'll click the existing sprocket button. Now I can click on the edit icon to see how it is configured. The first thing you'll see is that I'm not using the headline field. Since this is going to sit at the top of the homepage, I don't think it's necessary to say latest stories. You can also add a description, but also in this case, I want it to be clean, so I'm not going to use that. Since there are multiple stories, I can choose the transition style. In this case, I chose it to fade. The type of content, I'm going to choose all. Next, you have the option of using tags to include or exclude stories. This is a very useful feature, but for this demo, we're going to keep things simple, so I'm not going to use that. Then I select the content from all sections of the site. For the order by option, I'll select issued. That means the stories will appear based on the date time they were published. For the offset, we won't use that feature at the moment, but I'll use it for the next sprocket and explain how it works there. And the number of items to display, I want to show 2. And at the bottom, we can decide which info we want to appear in the sprocket for each item. In this example, I want to show the thumb, the title, description, author, date, and section. I also want the items to automatically fade from one to another, even if the user does not click on them. Okay, so let's hit save, then let's preview the sprocket. You can see the 2 latest stories by issue date, and they fade from one to another. That's what we were going for. So let's add the list sprocket to the right column. Again, click the Add button inside the container. Again, no title. This time we want to show 4 items from the whole of the site based on the issue date. This time also I'm going to show the thumbnail, the title, date, author, and section, but I'm not going to show the description. Now let's go back up a bit and I'll explain the option for an offset. The goal of this layout is for the latest stories to automatically appear based on an issue date. At the top here, there are 2 sprockets together that will display 6 of the latest stories. Basically, they work together to do that. As a result, I need to use the offset feature to make sure the 4 stories on the right don't repeat any of the stories that are in the carousel on the left. And that's what the offset is for. Since the carousel is showing the latest 2 stories, I need to add an offset of 2 to my list here. The result is that the list will show 4 stories by issue date, but it will skip the first 2 and start with the 3rd story. That way, the first 2 stories already displayed in the carousel don't repeat right next to it in the list. Okay, now I'm going to put an empty container here to hold this place while we continue down the page. So at the bottom here, we resume the 2/3, 1/3 layout by adding 2 containers as we did above. On the left side, I'm going to add another list sprocket. It'll be very similar to the one we have above, but with a couple of differences. We have more space, so I'll display the items with a description. And in the offset, I must account for all 6 stories displayed above. On the right, I'm going to add a banner ad. I'm using Google's Ad Manager here, so I'll add a sprocket that I set up previously. This is a standard rectangle banner that I would reuse throughout my site. For more info on how Google's Ad Manager works in Metro Publisher, please reference the information in the support site. Okay, so then below I'm going to add an event calendar sprocket. This calendar will show the latest 3 upcoming events from the event search I set up called Upcoming Events. Because it's connected to an event search, a button will appear at the bottom that automatically links to the event search page. Let's preview what we've done so far. At the top, we have the 6 latest stories. Then at the bottom, the flow of the story resumes without any repeats. We also have the ad showing and the calendar below. So that's looking good. Now let's add my call out for the guides and my mailing list. All right, so back to the empty container that I created. I want to use a gallery sprocket here and link manually to content I've created. For most parent publications and city regionals, guides are a big source of traffic and therefore revenue. These are typically in the form of articles or business directories that get updated once a year. As a result, I want to feature some of those on my homepage with a compelling graphic that links to the specific content. These are not updated daily, but I want my users to be trained to look here on the homepage for links to guides, and so I'm going to title it Resources. So I'll insert a gallery sprocket that I previously created with the title Resources. In there you can see that I have a curated list with 3 items linking to my guides for social media, travel, and family finance. Since the graphics already include the title, I'm not going to include the title in the sprocket. You can see, because it's a full width container, the 3 stories display as a nice grid. Also important to me is that I get users to sign up for my newsletter, so below I will add an HTML sprocket that goes full width, and in there I'll paste the code from my newsletter service provider. Now I have an area in the middle of the homepage that lays out a nice grid and displays evergreen links to my guides and also the sign up for my newsletter. So that's basically it. What we've created is a homepage that's completely automated. Hopefully you can see that with a creative combination of automating sprockets, using offsets, and linking to evergreen content, you can create a robust landing page that has very little daily burden of maintenance.